Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. We're a little delayed today because I went into a little media dive. I wanted to make sure that what I had were my facts in order, and I wanted to share with you some things that probably are not going to make it in a big way on the mainstream media, but I don't know. You'll probably hear it here first. If you follow me over on X, you've seen a taste of it. We'll get a little bit deeper into that, talking about the alleged shooter who is deceased outside of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I'm fascinated by that. I had a discussion with one of my buddies in law enforcement in the area, and he said, isn't it something that a kid in Chicago could take a Mac-10 and mow down a couple of firefighters, and it would be business as usual in Chicago. You could do the same thing in other cities as well, and people would just think, yeah, that's what urban rot looks like. That's what America has come to. And then you do it out in somewhere like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. You do it up north of Sandpoint. You do it out in the woods, where there's a bunch of people that are just trying to be left alone. You'd imagine if you've been in any part of northern Idaho, you know what kind of country that is. And you see it's some kid and he represents something different. And suddenly people care. And there's a discussion. And so I'm seeing a fascination online. Of course, everybody wants to blame it on something. They want to say, oh, well, clearly he must have been a transgender person. Oh, he must have been a left-leaning idiot. He must have been an Antifa guy. There must be some explanation for this. What if the explanation is like the saddest thing there is? Something that's everywhere, like divorce and teenage depression and isolation and social isolation, and the fact that the kids are online and not paying attention to the normal social cues that maybe we grew up with, where those people would have been drawn back into the fold. What if it's moms just not paying attention to their kids? What if it's dads not being with moms? I have a speculation about this, and I don't have hard facts on a lot of it, other than it is obviously universally a problem across the entire country right now. And I think if we're being honest with it, it implicates a lot of us. And so we don't like it. But it is something we should probably discuss, because if we're going to go out there in the world and you're going to represent yourself the way that I do, which is that I'm a conservative, I'm not a Republican. I say that all the time on purpose. And today is going to be even more useful to discuss that, because Elon Musk has said, if you guys are going to do something that is not conservative, like spend all of our money and put our future in debt, and then I want to launch a different party. I want to do fiscal conservatism. I actually want to preserve that thing. And that's going to upset a lot of people inside the so-called MAGA movement. It's going to upset a bunch of regular Republicans and not regular Republicans. If you guys know anything about the way that I run this program and the way that I've made the argument, it is my argument that the so-called rhinos that people who listen to this show probably are really frustrated with, the Susan Collins, the Lisa Murkowski types, the Mitt Romneys of the world that sort of seem very squishy. I would say they're not rhinos. I'd say that is what the Republican Party is, because I see two different arguments being made all the time, every single day. And I think these all relate to each other, which is that a loss of traditional values have created the situation that we're currently in. But you make it really hard for me to be able to justify. I can sit back as a sort of interested party, but not aligned with any team. I don't put on anybody's jersey. You're not going to see a donkey or an elephant here. And so what I recognize is that there are people on both sides of the aisle that say we can't get any headway on our agenda because we are dealing with a Washington uniparty. And that goes all the way down, and it becomes uniparty in your state houses. Certainly, it is a problem in the state house in Texas, which should be a very conservative live and let live kind of area. It was historically, and it's not now, not in the same way. They're pushing all kinds of absurd policies that you don't understand why they would go and be complacent with these things. They're making peace with evil instead of destroying it, right? And so here we are, with people making an argument that there is a quote unquote uniparty, but God forbid you create a solution that's outside of that uniparty. If you want to go and do something different, like happened in the 90s, then you're going to get Bill Clinton. If you try to create a third party that is functional, then the danger is that you just handed victory to the Democrats, and it's your fault. But that ignores two fundamental things, and I want you to think about them because we'll get there in a minute. There was a movement to recapture the GOP. As I recall, it was called the Tea Party movement, and it doesn't seem like the Tea Party movement moved the ball the way that anybody hoped. In fact, most of them got sucked up into the swamp monster. So working from the inside seems fairly obvious that it doesn't work. A lot of you thought that's what the quote-unquote MAGA movement was. But the MAGA movement is just a cult of personality behind a man who does a great job on some things and does a mediocre job on other things. And as I continue to keep seeing, he's not as sharp as he was in the 90s, because I've seen all the interviews. They keep recirculating the things that Donald Trump says. He was faster on his feet back then. He may have the same principles, and that's fine, but those principles are essentially 90s Democrat principles, and they're not awful. They're really not. They're pretty good. They were maybe the thing for the peak time in the United States. If we hit peak everything, it was just after the end of the Cold War, where we had quote unquote won, and we saw the best situation, still highly imperfect, but the closest thing to like peak America. Maximum freedom for most people, maximum accountability, et cetera, okay? So all of this is to say, there have been two attempts to retake the inside of the party, and they don't seem like they were successful for me, and I'm willing to hear someone say otherwise. But you better come with facts, and you better give me examples of that movement, because I don't see it. You can't simultaneously argue that there's a uniparty and everybody is just different wings of the same bat, which flies around and screws over the American people, and at the same time that we're talking about something that you cannot change, God forbid, because if you do, you immediately hand over victory. I think we've seen what the Democrat energy looks like, and it leans like what's going on in New York and in California, where it leads to destruction. You can't tell me that Donald Trump won with nothing but GOP votes, because people had to cross the aisle. There is a big chunk in the middle. That is the gettable gains, I think. And how many people that are on, let's say, the OG, what you call rhinos, what I call the Rio GOP, the sort of like live and let live nonsense, where they just want to make peace with evil and lose more slowly. Those people don't seem like they align with most of the people that listen to this show, who are far more likely to take a hard line. So we're seeing this interesting fracture, and it's what the show is named. Elon Musk made an announcement yesterday that is critical, saying that if the big beautiful bill passes, if this huge spending, and anybody who claims that, I had people this morning on social media already telling me, well, it's about tax cuts. No, it should be about justifying taking your money. Taxes should not be a foregone conclusion that the federal government has access to your money. I've got some founding fathers as we come up on Independence Day that are making that discussion and what the purpose of our government was supposed to be by the men who designed this government. We may have spent 250 years dismantling it, but there was a purpose, there was a design, there was an idea. We've gotten so far from it that those men probably would have thrown off the shackles and started shooting already. So we'll get all to that. Just in case you get into yourself into a shooting situation, you might want to have yourself squared away with the right kind of equipment. I'm not advocating that, but this is actually, this is good stuff. The last time I went to the range, this is the undies that I put on. Check out my friends over at Undertac. They say summer's here, comes with heat and humidity and discomfort. If you live in Texas, boy golly, that is the case. That is my boy golly, because I'm trying to do it without swearing. I absolutely despise the heat here. I've switched to Undertac, especially when I'm going out and doing stuff on the range. If I'm doing tactical stuff, if I'm doing long-term lawn mowing or any of this kind of thing, they have a leading edge on premium edge comfort and function. Forget your old boxers. Undertac was built for special forces guys in brutal conditions, hard missions. Their premium modal fabric wicks away moisture 50% better than cotton. It's naturally antibacterial. That means the smell part of it, if you guys know what I'm talking about. Keeps you dry and cool and chafe-free. If you've ever done anything with a chafed set of legs, if you've ever created hamburger on your thighs, it is absolutely devastating. It takes you away from mission effectiveness. So if you're crushing a workout or you're just working on things that need to be in your yard, they've got the right product for you. They've also got a hidden E&E pouch, which is for Steve Friend to keep either cash or a microcard, or even a couple extra almonds for his marathon runs. You guys can keep a handcuff key, whatever you like. It's just a clever little design that it makes you know that it's made for a little bit more than what most people are doing with their undies. Explore an American-made battle weave socks. I've been wearing those. I actually very much like their socks. They make a great merino wool thing. You guys can check out their everyday carry shirts, incredibly soft comfies, hoodies rather, and joggers. If you guys are into the comfy clothes at home, 20% off site-wide with the promo code Kyle20. Oh, I had the wrong thing down there. So it's Kyle20. I'll have to update our link below. Don't forget this, Kyle20, easy enough to remember because 20% is what you're going to get off at the site. Again, you're going to support a veteran-run company. They also help nonprofits. They fight human trafficking through their donations. It's Undertac, the website, UNDERTAC, undertac.com. And the promo code Kyle20 saves you 20%. Let's get into this. This is going to be kind of a heavier show for a Tuesday, but I don't think it's terrible. And I think we're going to cover less topics and more ground today. So let's do that right now. All right, and I can already tell just based on seeing the chat over there that there's going to be some agreement, some disagreement. We're going to have some contention. That is something I want you to think. I have no interest in telling you your opinion. I watched a guy, some of you guys know him, his name's Sean Farish. He seems like a really nice guy. I think I've met him in person one time in Tennessee. He's a commentator. He does stuff for LFA TV and some other things. But his claim to fame is that he was like a house painter in New York, that he does a good Trump impersonation. And so he made these like viral videos. He has a following for that. But there's not a lot of 34-year-old house painters that I want to have tell me what my opinion is on politics. I want to think about it. I want evidence. And the evidence that this guy went out there and he was pushing back on Elon Musk got a lot of views on his post, essentially saying that you're going to move the goalposts, you're going to fracture the MAGA movement, and so therefore you have to work to reform it from inside. His argument was about Twitter. You didn't go build a new social media platform, you bought the existing one. That assumes a couple things. That assumes that the GOP is a fixer-upper and not a teardown. And you're going to have to make that argument a little bit more strongly than just saying you did that with a company, because companies and political movements are not the same thing. And again, the evidence shows if you try to do the fixer-upper move, you end up with more of the same. That's my experience of it. You guys tell me otherwise. Push it out there and share it with me. But if there's another example of a Tea Party type movement, I don't know. I feel like Ross Perot actually was the right answer and if there was a little bit more longevity in it, if social media existed, if you could actually organize people at the grassroots level the way that it was trying to, you've got a different animal. And we're at a time where that may be the case. The MAGA movement and the essential MAGA sort of position is that this guy has all the answers, that they have, that whatever he says goes. And if you have a problem with it, you are the problem. I don't get along with that kind of thinking. It doesn't work for me. I think that's problematic. I think that's idolatry. And we've done entire shows about idolatry here in this country. I'm sorry, on this podcast. I'm saying country because I'm looking at some of these founding father quotes. I found a really neat thing. This actually came from, I think, ammo.com of all places. Go figure. People who care about guns also care about sort of the fundamental freedoms and the reason that this country was put up. You remember we played a little snarky clip the other day, which was talking about guns with a guy named Matt from Don't Worry About It, right? It was an SNL sort of silliness. And they were like, what are we going to do? You know, we've given people the ability to speak. What else? What's our next principle in this country? And he said, guns. And it's like, well, what about guns? It's like, have them, use them, own them. John Adams had a thought about sort of like the idea that men represent danger to all things and that government ought to be the thing that stands in between it. He says there's a danger from all men. The only maxim of a free government ought to be to trust no man living with power to endanger the public liberty. Said another way, the purpose of the government is to protect you from force and fraud and things that may in fact infringe on your liberty. This was the debate between the Federalists who wanted some sort of power in the center and the Anti-Federalists who immediately saw that this was a threat and a danger to us. The Anti-Federalists were the compromise party that got us the Bill of Rights. And what did the Bill of Rights do? It leashed government. It restricted it. How many times do you hear Americans, and this is a big problem because we have a very politically illiterate nation, a nation that doesn't even know what its founding principles are, doesn't know what actual law or process looks like. You could take an average man on the street and we do it. I guess we have to remember that the average person is at a average IQ, and that means about half the country is less than that. That's not great, but it is reality. These people all have an even say to you. No matter how educated or how bright you are, there are really dumb people that can cancel out your vote immediately. Kind of why they thought that they wanted a republic and not a democracy. What was the purpose of the government? What were they instituting? What was the original reason that they threw off the shackles of a king, which, by the way, both the left and the right would love to have a king. It doesn't matter whether it's King Barack or it's King Trump. There is a strong movement in the human heart that desires a king. It's a biblical instinct. God warned against it and people still wanted it. Why? I think because at the end of the day, most people want to shirk responsibility. They don't want to be the one who is ultimately held responsible for their own success or failure. What they want is they want someone else to say, I'm going to handle your problems. And if they don't do a good job, then you can blame them. It's like a very human instinct, so I understand this. But most of us don't want to take personal responsibility for our own decisions. We would love it if somebody else would, and it also gives us the ability to blame them should we fail, which means they failed. You don't have to own it. What's the entire purpose? There's Thomas Jefferson. He's a great thinker. Again, saying what is the purpose of this government? How many people in America think that the government gives them rights, grants them rights, offers them things, that its job is to provide things for them, especially the federal government of all things? And how dumb is that based on what it was created to do? Jefferson said, quote, a wise and frugal government, which shall restrain men from injuring one another, that's the force part, shall leave them to otherwise free to regulate their own pursuits of industry and improvement, right? And shall not take from the mouth of labor the bread that it has earned. It is the sum of good government. The government shouldn't have a right to take your first fruits. Otherwise, you're not a free person. You might as well be just reimagined serfdom. It's a medieval model. I had someone the other day say that the only people who should vote are the people who actually pay property taxes. Yeah, that works right up until the fact that there shouldn't be property taxes. It's such lazy thinking. It's the same problem I have where it says, well, the only people who should vote are the people who have positively played into income taxes. That works in so much as you have an income tax, but I don't think the government has a right to those things. The consumption taxes make sense, but remember, that was the original Boston Tea Party. They were pissed about a consumption tax. You didn't even need to buy tea. The people just did. And so the people that were in the tea business and the people that were in the tea drinking business were offended by it. And so they went after it. Yeah, that was after a series of other actions, but let's be real. That was a consumption tax. Imagine the idea that everything you earn first goes to the government. Who gets a first crack at your paycheck? The federal government. For those of you that live in the world that I'm living in right now, I just got paid for March, by the way. Actually, I might get paid today for March. Totally different business model than what I was used to most of my life. I was a W-2 employee like most people were. And the government dips in first, right? The government takes their tax cut for Social Security, for federal income taxes, before you ever get to see $1 of your earnings. And then it allows you to have some of it back. And then at the end of the year, if you or they, because of the systems that they have, pulled your money, then they'll give you a tax refund. Money that was yours, that they were holding on to on your behalf because they got your money first. Is that not far afield from where we started here? And everybody acts like, maybe we should be excited about the Firearms Act that we're going on. By the way, I misspoke the other day. I said that two things that I want to correct. One is I said that Mike Lee was had a big donor that was called BlackRock. It wasn't BlackRock, it's Blackstone, so a very similar name, slightly different group, not the same organization that people were arguing about. So that's a correction, and I want to own that one. The second one is that I keep calling this thing the Short Act, which is about short barrel rifles, and the SAFE Act, which I believe is the old name of it, but it's called the HPA, the Hearing Protection Act, which is the suppressors piece, which all got removed. The funny thing about all of that, for me, looking at this interesting debate as members of the American public are learning about the parliamentary nature of our Senate, which they didn't know about 5 seconds ago. Most people didn't, and now they're going to be all experts on it, right? Just like the same way that people became experts in virology and they became experts in comets when there's some sort of astronomical problem going on. They became experts in electric vehicles. I don't think most people understand how our system works. And the complicated system of rules that the Senate has created for itself to be able to manage the internal workings of the Senate. None of which, by the way, are laid out in the actual Constitution. You can go back and read it. It's very short. The Constitution you can read in 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. You can just go right through it. They've created all these structures. And why is it? It's the same thing we made the argument about the other day. Politics for ugly people, show business for ugly people, right? That's what politics is. It's the same people that were interested in like student government that actually had no real power. They were practicing and creating these nerdy little laws. And now you have this other problem where now some parliamentarian is going to tell you that you cannot remove something that has to do with the tax, which is obviously a budgetary issue. That's money. And said, no. The primary nature of those two gun bills is actually to remove the regulatory power of the federal government. What you may not know is that in 1937, the Supreme Court actually upheld the tax. Because if that law that they tried to do in 1934, limiting your freedoms, which are guaranteed, by the way, by the Second Amendment, it says that you may not infringe on them as a government. You cannot pass laws that infringe on it. It's plain English. It's not even up for debate. The reason why they were able to pass taxation to it is because taxation was not regulation. They knew that if they made a regulatory act, it would not stand constitutional muster. And the Supreme Court, which already was in for the game at that point and never pulled power away from government. This is the 1930s. In 1937, affirmed that it was because it was a tax, it was okay. But if it was regulatory in nature, it would not be. And the parliamentarian in 2025 just told us, yeah, now we're dealing with something that is in fact regulatory. It actually doesn't have anything to do with the tax. If you were to pull the tax, then it would be nothing but regulatory, which we know based on previous Supreme Court decisions should have been unconstitutional, which tells you that Congress passes laws that are unconstitutional all the time. And what is our recourse? Basically none. What is the purpose of this government? If it is wise and frugal. What do those two words mean? Wise, possessing wisdom, frugal, judicious with the use of our funds. Maybe a government that has to ask for money instead of that it gets first cut at our money. It's like prima nocturne, like where the king gets the first night with the women as they're married. Like that's what our federal government does with our paychecks. It's crazy. Force and fraud. That's what it's supposed to protect people from, so they can live their life as freely as possible without any of this extra nonsense. Thomas Jefferson also had this to say, which is worth looking at. The spirit of resistance to government is so valuable on certain occasions that I wish it to always be kept alive, or wish it to be always kept alive. It will often be exercised when wrong, but better so than not exercise at all. Do you get it? Like, our government under the last administration actually told us very specifically that if you were anti-government or you were anti-authority, which, by the way, is the definition of what our founding fathers stood up with, and especially the anti-federalists, they were anti-federal government. They were anti-centralized government. If you hold those views, then you are a domestic violent extremist and you are worthy of being watched by our FBI. And what has been corrected by this FBI related to those things? Anything? I'm going to read you something because this is actually something Machiavelli wrote. I have it sitting in my on my phone, so I'm going to share it with you here. This was shared with me by Aaron Stevenson. I want to read you the actual language of a discussion about how to handle government. This is something that has been known for hundreds of years. Previously, when new governmental organizations would come in, when a new government would take over in a country, what did they do? If they overthrew a king, if they overthrew an elected government, they would exile and execute the people that were involved in maintaining that previous government. Why? Because everyone knew that that was the threat. That was the danger. They didn't have a name like deep state or administrative state, but that's what they're talking about. Listen to this. This is Machiavelli. Quote, He then, who sets out to govern the masses, whether in a free state or in a principality, and does not secure himself against those who are hostile to the new order, is setting up a form of government which will be but short-lived. Put this back in the Faraday bag now. If you set up a new form of government and you don't rid yourself of the previous workers, sycophants, acolytes, the people who have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo, you don't win. You just do it for a little while and then you're overthrown. Because what it means is if you do not gut the deep state that exists, the administrative state that has been there, that has built this entire apparatus up, the shaky foundations, if you don't do that, then you are going to be gutted by the deep state. Either you gut it or it guts you. Those are the only two options. The best case scenario is a government that does the following. Alexander Hamilton. It is happy when the interests which the government has in the preservation of its own power, government always seeks to maintain its own power, coincides with a proper distribution of public burdens and tends to guard the least wealthy part of the community from oppression. You have to have a balance for it to work. The government has to be interested in the preservation of its own power as it protects the weak and the minority and the dissent. And we actually have an entire Bill of Rights that does that, because the power would theoretically reside in a government that's more than one person. That means it has more power than you. And so the government cannot go out and search and seize your things. And it can't put soldiers in your home. And it can't restrict your ability to speak out against it, or to gather and assemble and say that you're pissed off, or to worship as you choose, or to own firearms, which they just call arms. All bearable arms. Arms that can be born. Right? This stuff should be really simple. How do we lose that operate? Like, people don't know. So it's worth knowing as we come up on July the 4th, we've entered into the beginning of July right now. I saw some people saying online that this is now MAGA month. This is the month when they cast off the net, when they declared independence from a lot of these things that we have just accepted as the status quo, and that you can't beat it. So anybody who says, and this is the story right now, this is the wild story that's going on with Elon Musk's announcement. If you guys saw it, I actually put it in the, I think I put it in the thumbnail today, which is, he said, if they pass this bill, then I will launch the MAGA party the next day. I'm sorry, I'll launch the America party the next day. The White House responded. I've got a little video of Trump saying some things about it as well. I've got some examples for you of when things work the way they're supposed to work, and maybe the harbinger of what they could become. Because how far is it away when this sort of thing happens? This is a story that comes from Turkey, a satirical magazine. It was called Le Monde, as I was able to read. I just kind of saw it briefly before we got started. The Le Monde magazine published a cartoon. It's a string of condemnations. It got a string of condemnations from government officials because it represented the Prophet Muhammad. I love how we always say the Prophet Muhammad, not Muhammad the Prophet, or just Muhammad of Islam or whatever. I don't know. It sparked angry protests outside the magazine, and because people were upset, the majority, the government decided to take action, and so the satirical magazine employees were detained. We're actually not that far from that in this country. We had the Obama administration investigating various journalists, keeping files on them. We're just not nearly as overt on it. We're not willing to just go out there and throw off the cloak and say, yeah, we're going to go after people that we don't like because of the thing that they did that is offensive to us. Except they kind of did, didn't they? They kind of did quell that, because the First Amendment in the United States covers a couple things, right? Freedom of the press, sure. Freedom to assemble, unless you assemble inside the velvet ropes in a government building. And then we're going to go hunt you down in a way that has never been done before. We're going to move roughly $5 billion, maybe more dollars, to investigate people who committed no violence, despite an entire year full of violence against government buildings and government actors and government agents that happened in a dozen cities or more in 2020. God forbid the people from the team that they didn't like who were trying to question the status quo. I have no problem with the people that generally align with the quote unquote MAGA movement. What I want them to do is not be idolaters and look and say that only one person is the solution. And you know what? You tried it. But have you seen anything that says that the United States has fixed the election problems, the election machines, the way that votes are tallied, the mechanisms that handle this stuff? No. I haven't seen it. Have those reforms been put into place? Doesn't seem like it. So are you going to get more of the same just because you were, quote unquote, too big to rig? Should that be the case? Should we just accept that there's just corruption and that you don't have a chance to change it unless they're so overwhelming? This is kind of a problem. And as you guys are saying in the chat, of course, yeah. Isn't that the whole point of what the concern about, quote unquote, government gangsters? Or the argument that cutesy time is now over, that you got to solve the problems? If you don't gut the deep state, the deep state guts you. And it's very patient. Because the reason that the deep state, the administrative state, exists is because every single person that's worked in government that has seen more than one president, and I was one of those people, right? I came in and Obama was the president, and then it was Trump, and then it was Biden. I saw 3 presidents in my short term in government. I was only in government for a little over 6 years. I outlasted 3 presidents. Well, one of them outlasted me, I guess. So if the deep state knows that another president will come and we'll just bide our time, we'll just burrow in like a tick and we'll just kind of hang in here, then the answer is that that is your problem. And I thought that's what the campaigns were about. I thought Americans were like, yeah, we're sick of this. Let's upset the apple cart. But we're not seeing it. Because the first thing that happens is you have to trust somebody, and you might as well trust people who know what's going on, and those people have a massively vested interest in what's going on there. I think we've talked about it here before, but I'm going to just briefly mention this. These are just facts, and they mean whatever it is that you guys want to go out there and assign to them. So go out there and do some research if you like. Go out there and ask yourself what it means. But the chief of staff in the White House, Susie Wiles, was a managing partner in Jacksonville, Florida, for Ballard Partners, which is a lobbying firm. That lobbying firm employed the current AG, who did lobbying on behalf of foreign nations as a FARA agent. She's allowed to do that. She's allowed to make a pretty penny doing so, and she did. They also, Ballard Partners, have a inked deal that is well publicized going back to 2016 with the largest lobbying firm in Chicago, which is probably one of the most corrupt states there is. And that lobbying firm is called Allserco. Allserco is owned by John J. Kelly Jr., who is Julie Kelly's husband. So you've got this Dem donor, Dem influence shop, married to a lady who's a quote-unquote MAGA lady, who's out there working on behalf of the J6ers, allegedly, giving 6 figures worth of money to Democrats, living in Florida and living in Illinois, working with a woman who is now hanging out in the White House. When we talk about a quote-unquote uniparty and that they all kind of have the same vested interest because they all make a lot of money off it, you guys aren't making money off any of that. I know you're not. I'm not making money off that. But you see kind of some of the people that are in there and you're like, why are they not effective? Why are they not gutting the things that they said they would do? Because these people have been doing this stuff for a long time and they make money off being part of that system. That system is very profitable if you don't have strong principles, if you just have the principle of, I want to make money. One of the most alerting things that Kash Patel told me ever, and I should have thought more of it at the time, I asked him whether or not he thought like what position would you be best in the Trump administration? And he said, I could be the CIA director or the FBI director. Told me that on a phone call. He would be equally good in either role. That's absurd. That's an absurd statement. The background that it takes to be in charge of the CIA versus the FBI is absurdly different. They're not even close. There is not a person that would be great at either one of those roles, as far as I can tell. But what that really meant, and I didn't know it at the time, is that I just want to be in the Trump administration. I want to be one of the guys in that field because those people are set for life. You go serve at a cabinet or a just sub-cabinet level position, you're good to go for life. And you get to fly around in a private jet and you get to be a big timer. And I missed that cue. So shame on me because I'm pretty good at picking up on cues and stuff. It's worth knowing that when you go into this. I'm not talking about this in like a void or an abstract or a guy who used to paint houses and I just think that this is what's going on. No, look, I had these conversations. People picked up the phone and called me. As absurd as it is, a suburban dad with 4 kids who worked in the government for a couple of years was getting calls in our little suburban place outside of Austin, Texas, nowhere near the centers of power, asking, how do we fix this problem? And they used it just well enough to get into the job and then not fix the problem. Is that not terrifying, people? Our system is not working real well. But it's still better than the alternative, like what you saw in Turkey. I see this story and it makes me think of both the good and the bad of the American justice system. This is state level justice. This is not the federal system. And even that is as crap as it can be. This is Brian Kohlberg. Kohlberg is the guy that was accused and is now going to plead guilty to stabbing 4 students at a college in Idaho that blew across the news story. And people were asking me to come on and comment on it, which I did not have a comment on because I didn't work these cases. And I thought it was really dumb. It was my first glimpse into how dumb mainstream media is. Hey, you were in the FBI. Will you come talk about a quadruple homicide that you know nothing about in a state that you didn't ever live in? Because you have credibility. You have a good voice. And my answer was like, that's not really my lane. There's a reason why I'm not a Fox News commentator, because I'm not going to step out and say things about stuff that I don't know about. And I don't know about that story until I read about it. And I know as much as anybody else does about it. What I do know is that this is the best case scenario at this point in time. The families are very upset because the prosecutors negotiated out a plea deal and got a plea deal, and they didn't go and ask the people, hey, would you be cool with a plea deal on the person that just admitted to killing your children? But that is the purpose, by the way. Force and fraud, it's actually supposed to be the reason why our system works. And those constitutional amendments are actually supposed to protect the evil and the guilty as well. This guy actually got what is supposed to happen, which is to say there wasn't like a posse that went out and strung him up, threw a rope over a big piece of wood and hung him because they were pissed off. He went through quote unquote due process. It just turns out our due process is so broken that this happened in November of 2022. And here we are in the summer of 2025, and he's just now pleading out. But what didn't happen is nobody dragged him by the neck outside of the town and hung him. They didn't do a lynching, which is what would happen if you didn't third party outsource your vendettas and your need for justice to somebody else. So that is what the American system is supposed to do. It's just really slow and it's really frustrating. And a lot of this stuff is built up over years and years of nonsense because this thing could be done far more quickly. However long it takes to do the investigation, why are we so damn slow to bring justice to these families? That's the real problem. And you're not supposed to get the thing that you desire, because the thing you desire if someone stabs your child to death is to beat that person to death with your own hands, most likely. To skin them and leave them to be eaten by birds and buzzards and bugs and to have the most painful, horrific death there is. That's what you want when someone takes your child. And the whole reason that we have this government is it's actually supposed to guard the people that are wrong and did horrible things. We actually we give them space to have a due process and not our process. It's kind of a Christian idea because most of us would pray for grace in that situation, even though we probably think that we would not have it. In any case, this is an indication of the system working as imperfectly as it does. It's a great illustration of how slow and obnoxious and horrible it feels to see that, because how would you feel 2.5 years later, and then in the dead of night, a prosecutor gets a plea deal, and so the guy says he's going to spend a lifetime in prison? The people who founded this country knew that vengeance wasn't supposed to belong to the public or the mob or the masses, and that because the masses were into that kind of thing, we outsourced it. That's what civilization looks like. That's how you end up with a civilization that doesn't do this. Hundreds of men clashing with riot troops, trying to take down the employees of a satirical magazine who drew cartoons of their religious figure. I'm just saying. It does seem like a real problem. We're going to get a little bit more. I've got a couple little clips here of Trump talking about how he might be considering deporting Elon Musk. I think this is also just Trump being Trump, but it's also a really bad look. And then some fun little clips of Elon, because how many of you guys were all behind him? I'm on Team Elon. Yeah. The minute that your guy goes and turns on him, you're upset. How about the principles that underlie what he was saying? Has Elon changed the principles that he was saying? Because it doesn't seem like it from my end. And to watch people who are like 30-year-old day laborers or a 55-year-old guy who works in an industry that has never made like $1 million, let alone 20 or $200 billion, to say that this guy's an idiot and he doesn't know what he's talking about seems kind of foolish to me. So maybe we hear out somebody, because it takes something to be that successful. You got to be pretty bright. And you don't have to choose either or. You can choose the principles that are underlying the arguments if you're not an idolater. which would be good. I would really like it if we were not idolaters in this country. As we're talking about force and we're talking about fraud, let's do a quick little read from my friends over at Patriot Protect. They support our program. They also support the Seraphin household. This is the group that we use to keep ourselves away from these types of frauds. It's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. This is one of our paid sponsors. It's the full transparency thing we do here. The story they gave me is about 84 million password leaks. The question is are you one of the people that's in there? The odds are is pretty decent. If you use AT&T, you could have your credentials lost. It means usernames and passwords and email addresses left unencrypted, wide open on the internet. You'd be surprised what you can find on the web if you know how to do it. I'm going to show you some of that actually a little bit later in the show. If you want to have some of your data removed and you don't want it hanging out on the dark web, or if it is on the dark web being purchased, wouldn't it be nice to know so you could change some of that stuff? You can do so with Patriot Protect. Again, it's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. The odds of you becoming a victim of fraud at some point in time in your adult life, it's not really even an if, it's a when. And the question is how much. On average, people are supposedly, over a period of their lifetime, will lose about $600 a year in fraud. That's what we learned from the founder of this company. And so for about $8 a month or less, you can actually protect yourself in some way by removing yourself from all the data search websites, the data brokers, which I use frequently. I used them when I was in the Bureau. They're very helpful. If your name is out there, it's really nice. They also scan the dark web with the blackout service going farther to find out if your stuff has been sold, so you can change those things up, and that way you are not a victim. Criminals count on easy victims. Don't be an easy victim. Become a hard target. Patriot-protect.com/KYLE. You'll save 15% on the annual subscription. If you don't choose them, pick a service. That's just the one that we use in this house, and they're the ones that sponsor our program, so we're grateful for that. I'm going to do this little piece here. The White House has responded. Elon Musk. Elon Musk, again, he promised to do something if the White House is able to sign into to law the big, beautiful bill, which we talked about yesterday, is problematic. It's an omnibus bill. It has so many unrelated and disparate types of information that have nothing to do with each other that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't at the exact same time. A White House official appeared to suggest that Elon Musk's proposal for a new America Party would run a balanced federal budget was nothing more than a libertarian delusion. Isn't that a delusion that we should have, though? Isn't that kind of the delusion that the American founders had? This idea that there would be a system of government that would be equitable and would protect people evenly, including even those people who didn't have power. That was probably thought of as kind of a delusion, I bet. That they were going to take the best of the ancient world, like the Romans and the Greeks, and they were going to combine it with some of the best of what was going on in Europe and Western thought. There was going to be this brilliant renaissance. Here's the thing. We have one of the oldest constitutions, if not the oldest constitution in the world. Even as much as we've cut at it and pulled out the scaffolding. It's like a Jenga tower that we've pulled out the base and we're building up the top. It'd be nice to shore up that base again, wouldn't it? Elon Musk, a tech mogul who once enjoyed a role at the heart of the Trump administration, touted forming a new political party after revealing that he was fiercely opposed to Donald Trump's one big, beautiful bill, which was exactly what MAGA was against just 5 seconds ago, right? Wasn't MAGA against this stuff? Isn't that what you guys were all upset about with Kevin McCarthy? Isn't that why I was saying no one for speaker is better because at least they can't spend our damn money? Now everyone's like, it's Trump's agenda and he wants to spend all the money and he needs to raise the spending cap. It's like, how flexible are your minds? It's so wishy-washy. You can say the guy does great things when he does great things, and some things are not great. And having a huge bill, now they turn around and they go, well, he's only a billionaire because of his government subsidies. So we've got some little clips of people talking about that. That's a great talking point. You get the feeling that Elon Musk would probably be successful regardless because of his brain, because of his willingness to go and do. You know, that one concept we heard, the do matters. It's like, how do you do? Sometimes it means you fail. I actually saw a video that showed one of their lift shuttles exploding. And he said, success is not guaranteed, but entertainment is. It's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting seeing something explode in the air, as long as nobody's in it. This is a lady talking about the broligarchy, not the oligarchy, but now we also have to implicate men because it's a masculine thing. Guess what? There's a reason why we have founding fathers. It's a masculine impulse to tame the world around you. Women are a big part of it. They're the ones that are whispering in our ear and telling us when we're wrong, keeping us on track. That's really important. No question about it. But to go out into the world and stand up and say, like you see Elon on the screen right now, put your hands in the air and say, I'm the guy, I have an idea, I'm going to stand up and do it. You can be with me, you can be against me, that's okay. But I'm going to go out there and definitively say something that I believe is correct. kind of masculine, whether you like it or not. It's a masculine impulse. Here's a lady impugning the broligarchy and some of the issues, why it's so problematic. This is that creeping Marxism that even hits people that are on the quote unquote political right. It's squishiness.
When does a wealthy person cross the line from wealthy, successful, a positive influence on society to broligarch?
When they decide that they get to keep all the money and that they're not going to pay any of their fair share of the costs of the society that made them prosperous. Elon Musk's businesses were bailed out repeatedly by taxpayer-funded subsidies and tax breaks. The people who created Google were recipients of a National Science Foundation grant. The entire world of e-commerce was based on a taxpayer-funded communication system that became the World Wide Web.
So that may be true, right? But are we not significantly better off because of at least concepts like search engines and Google, that if money went in there and created a public good where we had access to be able to search for stuff? I think we're better off for that. The question is what do those people have to give up? Remember, the original principles that Google founded on were like, do no evil. And then they got a taste of what money looked like and what power looked like. And then they opened up their borders and their company to China, and they started compromising with evil. It's really a principles thing. It's really not like an origin story issue. Government dollars don't necessarily mean that you're the problem. So maybe you hold fast to those things. It's kind of funny to see people that are on the big MAGA movement. I guess Steve Bannon is one of them. Steve Bannon has always been a difficult subject for me to kind of deal with. I don't really get Steve Bannon. There's things he says that I agree with. And I look at it and I go like, yeah, that makes sense. That's sensible. It's a sensible, reasonable take. And then there's that Homer instinct that we've talked about here, where somebody they cannot help but divorce themselves from somebody else and say like they can't part ways. And all of the opposition seems very only to get more effect from them in the end. Steve Bannon, who's basically does 4 hours a day of cheerleading for Donald Trump with or without a little bit of shoves, is going after Elon. Steve Bannon was very wealthy, and I looked into one of the things that he did early on, which I had no idea about. Did you guys know that he used to sell fake gold in a video game? The World of Warcraft, they created a speculative company that would buy gold and other trinkets like crap in a video game to sell to people who wanted to have that crap in the video game. It was at a 100% like fantasy world company, and he took $40 million worth of investment to go do this stuff. There's a lot of weird crap that Bannon got involved in. And when you read about it, you're like, what? Who would think that? Opportunistic. And then now he's got 2 hours a day, times 2, where he like cheerleads this thing to do this Trump war room stuff. And they bring on sycophants like Julie Kelly and Mike Davis, and all they do, it's brilliant. Everything is brilliant. He's mad at Elon Musk, so here he is talking about that, doing an I told you so bit.
We're going to get him over, do something a little different, I think, that other shows have done, which I've been spending the afternoon talking to certain officials, that the CBO, and I think this is very important for the audience to understand, because Elon Musk is out, and he's, not that I told you this was going to happen, but he's out lighting up the president and lighting up MAGA, and claiming that it's time for a third party. And that this is, he calls it, I think, in all his maturity, the Porky Pig bill. He's going on about the spending, hammering it. And this is what galls me about this. This was the guy that told the president he was going to get $2 trillion of waste, fraud, and abuse cuts. Then he backed it off to $1 trillion. And this was on an annual basis. This wasn't over 10 years. This was $1 trillion because we asked him, I made sure the question was asked very specifically. And he said it over and over again, $1 trillion. And at the end of the day, I don't know, folks. I know some of you fanboys said we got 160, but we haven't seen the $160 billion. What we do is have a $9 billion rescission, and all of that is programmatic. I haven't seen anything specifically fraud and abuse put forward from the Pentagon or anywhere. So,
one of the interesting pieces is that the knock on Elon was that he went in there saying he would be able to find $2 billion worth of fraud, waste, and abuse, and that he basically continued to set that down and then eventually said that we couldn't do it. But what was that really telling us? Did the people that were running that government, did they all like roll over and open up their books and say, yeah, let's look for that problem? Like we're on board? Or do we go back to that Machiavelli quote, which says that you didn't gut the deep state and you just waited to have them gut you? I think what Elon saw, this is the impression I've gotten from all of his discussions, from all the interviews that he's done about it. He went out there and said, there's a real problem. We have an idea of how to go and get it, but we're not going to be able to do those things because we're talking about government, and government's job is to be not efficient. Government works against the interest of those who come in to change it. And they didn't solve the original problem. It's almost like there was one guy, he used to say something that I have this memory of. Personnel is policy. Isn't that a thing that we've heard before? Personnel is policy. So if you don't change the personnel, you cannot change the policy. Ain't that something? It doesn't mean I think Elon is like a great everything. I don't agree with a bunch of his stuff. I think AI is terrifying. I don't like EVs. I don't like electric vehicles. I don't think they're sustainable at this point. But I like the idea that somebody is out there trying to push technologies. If you've ever been inside of a Cybertruck or one of the cyber beasts like my friend has, it's freaking amazing. I don't want it. I don't covet it. I don't desire it. I think you're kind of a goofball if you have one. But if you can afford it and it's an interesting toy to you, people have all kinds of toys that I wouldn't spend money on. So I'm not mad about that. He's innovating, and one day that probably will change things. Until battery technology changes, we're not going to have that capability. But somebody's got to go out there and take that chance, and it's been very successful. There's a lot of people that want it, and they're selling virtue to the libs, and they're selling, American independence to the right-wing crowd. Okay, good on you. Smart marketing. Here's Donald Trump talking about whether or not he's going to deport Elon Musk or use Doge tactics to go in and investigate Elon. All of this is really dumb. This is the opposite. It's taking away from the real thing, which is whether or not this bill is conservative and good for what people who are what do they say? Going after Trump and going after MAGA, as though it is a collective. I would suggest that if MAGA is in fact a collective, that is a problem. What is the old rule that if everybody in the room thinks the same way, then somebody's not thinking? That seems truly the case. And God forbid you be the person who stand up, because you'll be pummeled immediately. You're the problem if you disagree. That's not a good system. Dissent actually fosters better and more creative thinking. It leads to more problem solving. Nobody ever got to the greatest ideas. And look at what our government does right now. It is a series of yes people. Nobody says no to a bad idea because they won't promote and they won't grow their garbage. And what do we got? What we have right now.
I don't know. I think we'll have to take a look. We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies, Peter. But Elon's very upset that the EV mandate is going to be terminated. And you know what? When you look at it, not everybody wants an electric car. I don't want an electric car. I want to have maybe gasoline, maybe electric, maybe a hybrid, maybe someday a hydrogen. If you have a hydrogen car, it has one problem. It blows up, So I'm going to give that one to Peter. I'm going to let Peter test it out.
That's not the argument going on here. And so you got a guy that says, I'm going to stand on principle, and look where I'm at. Look at this. Look at this little interview. Do you guys remember this, where he said, you can offer me money, offer me power? This is one of my favorites, because this actually, assuming that he operates this way, and most of what we're seeing looks like that's the way that he actually works. It looks like this is a person that is going to stand on his principles, of which I don't agree with all of them. But I respect people that have some. Same thing with Tom Massey. I probably disagree with Tom Massey sometimes. Some of you do too. Some of you disagree with him because he's not going to try to get things done the way Trump does. Some of you would just have like straight up differences on what you think the priorities are. That's where reasonable people can disagree. That's where you make compromises. Listen to this. This is an interview that he did with, who the hell was this? CNBC. It's a great interview. It's really stunted, and he's not even polished. He's not a broadcaster. He's a guy answering a question and trying to be precise, it sounds like.
I'm reminded of the scene in The Princess Bride. Great movie.
Great movie.
Where he confronts the person who killed his father. And he says, offer me money. Offer me power. I don't care.
So you just don't care. You want to share what you have to say.
I'll say what I want to say, and if the consequence of that is losing money, so be it.
Okay.
I think that's really plain. And if you listen to people, remember how many people were praising him, the MAGA people that were praising him, saying this is the least like a billionaire that you'll ever find, that he sleeps on people's couches, that he sleeps in his office, that he owns like a tiny little square foot house. Does he do weird, eccentric things that people who have tons of money do? Yeah. Does he make babies with women out of wedlock? Yeah. All that seems terrible to me. That's not conservative. But I love that he looked him in the eye. He didn't even agree with the man. There's a social convention when someone puts words in your mouth that you either agree or you disagree with them. He didn't even respond to that, because that's what you do when you look at somebody and they don't represent you. You don't feel even compelled to do it, because you're correct. It's the same reason why you should do an about face when somebody up talks at you with like leftist nonsense. The guy goes, so you don't even care. It's not that he doesn't care. Did you hear what he said? He said he desperately cares about something and he's going to say it. And the consequences are the consequences. Is he a weird guy? Yeah, you can tell. Socially unusual. That's okay. Because there's a principle there behind it. It seems to guide it. I don't know. I love it. This is Joe Rogan talking about him, calls him a wild man. If you know anything about, well, most of you guys won't know this, but the kind of friends that I tend to attract that are like really close to me, they're extreme. They do things all the way. Really wild things. Like no half-assed, like light their hair on fire and go running through it. I did the same thing. That's the way I work. Joe Rogan's talking about you need people like this. They are system disruptors because they understand that they actually believe in a system ideal. Most people are like go along to get along, follow orders, ordinary type people. Elon seems like he's one of those people that pushes against it. I always had a difficult time in systems because I looked at the system, saw the inefficiencies, and wanted it to work properly. And if you're the person that sees problems and brings solutions, you're an enemy to the status quo. I was always an enemy to the status quo in every single thing I ever did. I looked at it, understood enough of it to realize that we weren't going to change it, and then I moved on. I had somebody once describe that to me when I was going to the FBI. They're like, oh, it looks like you've had a lot of jobs. Like you can't really keep your finger on anything. It's like, no, I recognize where I was no longer going to be effective, and I moved on. I probably should have been in private industry, but I actually wanted to do something that was service related. That is a very big problem. How many of you would like to serve those around you and can't do so because the system actually stops your service? I think that's what's going on. Anyway, Joe Rogan kind of talked about that being the cool billionaire really means somebody who's an independent thinker, which is kind of what this country was about. We had a lot of really independent thinkers that said some really problematic things to the order of the day. And the result was like 250 years of the most freedom that anybody could have. And that's why we are feeling so desperate right now that something changed, because we can tell that we're on the edge of it falling. And the people that should be doing something about it or claim that they would, they're not.
Friends now, this is a bizarre thing to say, with multiple billionaires.
Yeah.
I know multiple guys that are billionaires, and they're very nice people. They're very nice, and I can see how it happens.
But you're also friends with the cool billionaires.
Yeah.
You know, like you managed to find the cool ones.
Well, Elon's the coolest. He's my favorite billionaire. That dude's wild. He's a wild boy. I will buy Teslas as long as they sell them, just to support that dude.
Just to keep Twitter going.
And they're dope. But yeah, just to support him, man. You God damn it, you need an Elon Musk in this world. You need a wild boy. You need a dude who's got $200 billion who dunks on people.
Dude, how great was watching him realize in real time how stupid Don Lemon is?
Oh my God.
Like you could actually see on his face as he's asking the questions, and he's like, well, if you lower standards, then you're going to get more incompetence. And Don Lemon's like, so you're saying black people aren't competent? And he's like, no, that's not. And he slowly starts to realize, like, oh, I have 80 IQ points on this guy.
It's not just that he has 80 IQ points on Don Lemon, or that he's smarter than the establishment people that he's dealing with. He actually just sort of like seems to say, I understand what's happening here, and I don't care the consequences of the words that I'm going to say if they're true. And that's how you get on the wrong side of the media. Remember, they loved him because he was making eco-friendly cars. They hated him because he was friends with Donald Trump and he was trying to make the government better. Now they're back to loving him because he's like this figure that is resisting. None of those people have principles. And what has he been saying the whole time? Like, we should be fiscally responsible. We should do things with our money that makes sense. We should optimize the human experience the way that he thinks, which I don't agree with, like some of the neural net and all that other stuff. Like, I don't want integration and transhumanism and all that stuff. I don't want that. But at least he's got a position that seems pretty darn stable. This is a great example of not stable. And then we're going to go into the situation in Idaho real quickly, because I did a little dive on that. That's what actually delayed me 5 minutes today. This is March versus now. This is CBS versus CBS talking about Social Security, making the argument that Elon Musk says it's a Ponzi scheme, and that's preposterous. And then them actually arguing that it's a Ponzi scheme because our government is a Ponzi scheme. It only exists by it is paying today's debts with tomorrow's money every single time. And Social Security is the perfect example of it. It is the exact opposite of what our government was designed to do. It was never designed to do savings account management for anybody. It was never designed to keep people from dying of hunger or anything else on the streets. That's not what your federal government does. This country was designed to have risk, and you're supposed to actually be able to try and succeed greatly or dare greatly and fail spectacularly and die trying. Back when I used to listen to Ben Shapiro, he said this all the time. Nothing about America said you were guaranteed success. You were only guaranteed a shot at the journey. And we don't all start at the same point during the race. Some people clearly have more money and more talent and more intelligence and more will and drive and so on. And some people do not. Some people are incredibly lucky. They have all these breaks and fortune smiles upon them. And some people did everything right and they still fail catastrophically and they die in poverty. Like, that's the human condition for you. So to hear people try to act like the government should balance that out, as though that man could create equality or some sort of idealistic thing, there's a reason why the word utopia means no place. It's a Greek word. If you've ever studied what the American experiment does, this was my senior capstone going through a liberal arts college at the University of Oklahoma. We had a capstone on American federal government where we looked at historical and literary utopias. And there's basically three elements that you have to balance out. You can have a perfect place, you can have a perfect system, or you can have perfect people. America is the closest thing to perfect place because it has all of the resources from sea to shining sea. It has a good and moral people. They are not perfect, but they are close to, at least at the time, that was the idea. They were the closest approximation, which meant a basically Christian nation with Christian principles. And then lastly, the question was, could you get a perfect system? You can never get perfect anything. You can make a utopia with just one of those being perfect. But since reality says there are no perfect anythings, no perfect systems, no perfect people, no perfect places, if you have the closest approximation of all three, you get a very durable form of government. And that's what the American experiment has always been about. And we've been eroding it since day one. And we are so eroded right now that we are running a Ponzi scheme where we are borrowing from people today to pay the people who need it now. And we're just hoping that it doesn't collapse under its own weight. The problem with Ponzi schemes is they all fall down. They're upside down pyramids, just like the Jenga. Listen to CBS argue against itself.
There was also a discussion that happened that reached a lot of people relative to Social Security. Elon Musk on the Joe Rogan podcast, he calls Social Security a Ponzi scheme. I would imagine lawmakers are having some response to that.
Yeah, I just checked that interview, which came out about Friday afternoon, now has 8 million views. So a lot of people tuning in, obviously, to Rogan's platform. We are seeing a lot of the congressional Democrats call what Elon Musk said, quote, outrageous.
Well, somebody who has the ear of the President of the United States attended that first cabinet meeting. Elon Musk, not an elected official, by the way, now saying that Social Security operates as a Ponzi scheme. That is a headline grabber on a Monday.
So just to remind everyone, Social Security is a pay-as-you-go system, meaning that we pay in right now for people who are already retired. Okay, so you're paying in so your mom can collect Social Security. And what we know is that this is based on demographics in large part. So when all those baby boomers were working their entire lives, there was more money coming into the system than was getting paid out. That extra money created a surplus. That's the Social Security Trust Fund. Then things flipped. Baby boomers, 11,000 are turning 65 every day. They're now needing their retirement benefits, but there aren't enough people working. So all that money that built up, that trust fund, it's being depleted. And over time, by 2033, according to the Social Security Board of Trustees, there will no longer be a trust fund and there won't be enough people working. And what that means is the system will only be able to pay out about 3/4 of benefits that have been promised. That's the math behind this.
you guys focus in on some of the funniest things in our chat. I put it back up on the screen here, so you guys are looking. One of you is very excited to find out or shocked to learn I went to a liberal arts college. I went to a liberal arts part of the University of Oklahoma. They have an honors college where you had access to like liberal arts programs, but I went to a public school. Go figure. None of that is relevant to what we're talking about here. What's crazy is that the argument that this is not a Ponzi scheme. The other crazy thing is, and she's actually tried to say that it's about the number of workers, which is part of the issue with Social Security. But the other part of it is the government borrows from that program liberally and funds it with IOUs. We've done entire programs on here where a significant chunk, double-digit percentage chunk of the federal debt is actually owed back to us as federal pensioners under the Social Security program. And when you guys realize it, I'll do some digging. I didn't grab the numbers off the top of my head here, but I've done it before. It's a huge chunk of our money is loaned out to other parts of the government and given back in the form of IOUs because the government cannot stay within its budget, which is exactly the thing that you're hearing Elon Musk talk about as being problematic. The damn thing doesn't function. So you can keep doing insanity and trying to do the same thing over and over again and hope you're going to get a different result, or you could try to actually do something different and maybe a third party run is not so crazy. Newsweek is psyched. They call it the starkest political threat since the election because they want to see division, but none of them want to see the actual solution. All right. That's what I have to say about that. There's a lot of sort of pontificating, if you will, or soapboxing and sermonizing, and I apologize for that. I think it's worth thinking about. Put your comments below where you agree, where you disagree. We can have respectful disagreement. If you put things like this, the other thing, we are so interested in having our own opinion come out of somebody else's mouth. That's what we go looking for. If someone's not going to challenge your thoughts, like that is an imbecilic way to live, to think that somebody else should just say your opinion so you can feel good about that opinion. Bring evidence, bring your citations. Let's have that discussion. I think that's where it's at. And honestly, I think you can actually deal with reasonable people that way all day long. Now I'm going to challenge you with something else. My challenge is that divorce is one of the most devastating things that has happened in this country, particularly no-fault divorce. That's not crazy to think about as a conservative person. It does make you think that somebody who's at the top of the ticket that claims to be MAGA, and MAGA people think they are one-to-one with conservatives. Conservative people do not think they are that. It shows you there's a problem when there's a guy up there who's had 2 divorces, who's on his 3rd marriage. It doesn't mean that I'm condemning you or saying you're a bad person because you have a divorce, but there's something that is a tangible outgrowth of so many of them, and they are really, really troubling and dangerous. We've dealt with it in my own household. My wife and I have talked about this and sort of the damage that she saw in her friends and herself and other things that go on because of divorce. And the one thing we always look at is like, it's about a man and a woman. It's about a relationship that may or may not be working. The entire purpose for marriage, if you're a conservative person, is to create a stable environment to raise children. And when you destabilize that, because mom is going to go out and find another guy, maybe dad goes out and finds another woman, what have you done? You've taken the most fundamental trust-based relationship that exists. There's probably 2 fundamental trust relationships that kids can look at. Number 1, it's their relationship with their provider. Is mom or dad going to be there when I need them? Are they going to feed me? Are they going to clothe me? Are they going to house me? Are they going to make sure that I am not out in the danger zones? Are they going to keep me from all of the scary things that the world offers? Are they going to provide protection and shelter and comfort? Great. Trust relationship number 1. And we know people that don't have those things are antisocial and have massive problems adjusting to our society as it exists. We see it all the time. Prison is full of it. People who have bad fundamental trust relationships that happen as an infant on. The second thing is do I see stability in my life? Is there anything that I can point to as a North Star that continues? How many of you have parents that were married for 50 years, 70 years? We go to church and somebody celebrated like an 80-year anniversary, and you're like, holy crap, they're 100 years old. And they got married when they were in their late teens or early, like right at 20. Man, incredible. You can set your watch by that stability. Or you're a teenager and you see that the one thing that should be permanent in your life, because that's what they said when they got married, and that's what you've always known your entire life, breaks apart. And my thought is what's going on right now in Idaho. And it may prove to be true, and it may not. But the truth of this particular concern is much broader than that, because everybody is looking for a scapegoat right now on what happened in Idaho, where a kid basically went into the woods and shot and killed firefighters that he didn't seem to have any relationship to. The news is reporting that he ambushed them, that the kid's name is Wes Rowley. Found this out today. He's like a young white kid. I'll show you pictures in a second. He's believed to have fatally shot 2 firefighters, wounded a third after setting a brush fire. Apparently, he spoke to the firefighters before he opened fire. Suspect is setting off fires to ambush firefighters, was the statement by the Kootenai County Sheriff. Bob Norris gave a press conference yesterday. There was an interaction with firefighters, something to do with his vehicle being parked where it was. They found him with a gun. The report says it appears we have a shotgun that was used. We were told it was a high-powered rifle, so all of that's pretty strange. Rifled slugs were being used, but also some smaller fragments that they were shooting, like maybe buckshot. So all of this is the technicality of it. They interviewed members of his family. People said that he dreamed of being a firefighter himself. That's troubling. His grandfather said there's something must have snapped, that he has nothing but sympathy for the firefighters that were out there. He actually loved and respected law enforcement. It doesn't make sense that he was shooting at them. Maybe he got rejected for something. He attended high school in the Scottsdale or Phoenix area originally, and then lived with him in Oklahoma for several months. Then he moved to Idaho last summer to be closer to his family. He'd been in the area for less than a year, per the sheriff. Had part-time residences in California and Arizona. More stuff still coming out. Grandfather said that they were worried about his height. He was only 5'8", so that might have prevented him from being a firefighter. That's nonsense. He worked in a tree service company. So all that stuff is to say, here's the deal. This is the kid. He was 20, right? That's Wes Rowley. That's from his mom's Facebook page. I went and dug on this stuff. There's mom's new husband. It sounds like stepdad. It's hard to say whether it's husband or boyfriend, but it looks like there was a wedding pictures. They're both wearing MAGA hats. They're both on the south lawn of the White House, standing there. You can see the White House in the background. They're both wearing different colored MAGA hats. That's a recent picture. Mom is apparently a competitive archer. She's sponsored. She competes nationally in archery. She's got some really vain looking stuff. It doesn't mean one way or another. I know that's social media is not reality, so I don't know if that's the case. She apparently runs a dog washing salon thing in Arizona. And there she is with this kid, Wes. Normal kid, doing normal kid stuff. Here he is jumping off a waterfall. They went to Hawaii in December. Okay. I'll go ahead and play this video. This is just a guy finding a cool waterfall. You can see him right there. He's not a transgender person, which you're going to see some stuff talking about. It doesn't seem like he has any sort of hormonal things. He's built like a normal kid who's 20 years old. He's skinny, muscular-ish kind of build, or athletic build, jumping into the water. No big deal. All right. But it does seem like there was a divorce, that he was like kicked around from mom to dad trying to figure out what's going on. And these are the things that really bother me. So that was mom. This is the kid. The question, they mentioned it in a ABC story. The grandfather said he went to go work for some tree trimming service, but he didn't know anything about it. I don't know if the grandfather was covering for somebody or whether he actually doesn't know. It says Dale Raleigh, which is the grandfather, said he went to go work for a tree company in Idaho about a year ago, but he didn't know which company. That may or may not be true. I had some reporting say that the company had some relationship to the family. The company he worked for was called Don Taylor Tree Services. Don't bother these people. I'm sure they're destroyed right now. But that's the shirt that he has when he was in Hawaii. So you're seeing on the one side of the screen, he's wearing a shirt. It's got a reflection of a tree underneath it. And it says tree service with 1951 as the last numbers. I went ahead and did some reverse number lookups and found the name of this place. They service trees in northern Idaho, in Spokane, and the surrounding areas. So out in eastern Washington, there's the top right picture. I cut the face off of the guy. He's one of the workers there. It shows the about us and who the people that work there are. And so he's one of the employees. He's wearing the exact same shirt, just has the sleeves on it, because I'm sure the kid tore the sleeves off and did his thing. But that's not the most upsetting thing. The scary thing is that, and this leads me to this weird, troubled situation we have with divorce. This is a picture from the social media I got from a law enforcement source. This is him going up to fly. Apparently his mom was taking a picture of him at the airport as he was flying off to go stay with dad in Idaho. He's wearing that black backpack. He's standing there, kind of slouchy, long hair. Like I said, kind of I don't know that he's an effeminate kid. He's kind of a pretty young kid. He's like actually would be probably a handsome man one day. Now that he's not going to live to find out. That's sad. It's troubling. But he's got that backpack on, and you can see on there he's got what looks like a keychain of a mermaid with pink hair and a green tail and a regular colored, like skin colored body. I read the Idaho Tribune this morning, which has been very aggressive about northern Idaho issues. They do a pretty good job on it. They are considered to be a right-wing news source that Grok, the AI tool, says is unreliable, but I found the reporting to be very good on a lot of things, including stuff that we saw reported on what happened in Coeur d'Alene, what happened with the Patriot Front story. They were on the ball and they nailed it. And so here you have this kid, and they identified a TikTok account associated with this kid that also occasionally pinned itself in Phoenix, Scottsdale specifically, where this kid is supposedly have been, with pictures of dogs and stuff, which would make sense if mom has a dog grooming service. So all of those things align. Pictures of the kid in it, which you guys can find on the social media trend that I put out there. And they have videos of him standing in front of like these like anime My Little Pony stuff. There's a whole thing about there. There's somewhere he's wearing a hashtag that says furry. He's wearing like a furry kind of suit. And all of that doesn't indicate to me an alternative sexuality so much as a maladjusted social problem where you have young boys and some young men. This is kind of like an incel type situation where they call themselves bronies. They have like either a fantasy fixation or a sexual fixation with this My Little Pony cartoon, which is made for little girls. But it does represent kind of an idealized female, nice, sweet voices, doing nice things. It shows a social disacclimation that bothers the hell out of me. And so I went looking for that particular mermaid picture because my friend sent me this picture and showed it to me. And I went like, okay, well, we got to figure out what this is. And that mermaid appears to be someone called Fluttershy, which is one of the My Little Ponies. Yes, my girls watch it sometimes. These brony type guys get fixated on it. And in 2013, they created a new version of the My Little Pony thing, which was based on ponies, if you guys can imagine. They're like all like little like unicorns and stuff. And they humanized these, and it was called the Equestria Girls, not equestrian, but Equestria Girls. 2013, they created these sort of humanized forms of the same characters that some of these guys have basically fallen in love with, which are cartoon horses. And that doesn't indicate a strange sexual thing per se. What it says is that they have a malformation with women and society and trust and all the other things out there. And they've gone to this like incredibly safe, fake version of reality that, the same thing is like falling in love with like the Smurfette. It's not real, but isn't that sad? Anyhow, you see this kid carrying that. That's a strange thing for a 19 or a 20-year-old boy to have, or a young man who's going to go work in the Forest Service in northern Idaho. Is going to have a Equestria Girl thing. The bottom picture here is a do-it-yourself little project that you can 3D create. So you can see that the optics are identical as far as like the pink hair and the green body or the green tail and so on. So I'm fairly confident these are 2 points on a line, which tell us that this guy, he's got a real problem there. That like that's a indication not of a sexual problem, but of a social disacclimation. An inability to connect normally, I would think, probably with females, which is sad because he's a handsome young kid. Not anymore. In any case, this is something that we don't want to deal with as a society, in my opinion, because there's too many people in the MAGA movement. There's too many people in the GOP movement that have broken marriages, that have divorces, that have kids that are disacclimated. I would have told you that my former boss when I was in the FBI was a very right-wing kind of guy. He loved guns. He was masculine. He served in the military. He was in law enforcement for the FBI, coming up on retirement. And he came out and announced to us that he had a gender-confused son his whole life who now identified as a girl, and another one that was gay. And what are the odds of one man having 2 gay and transgender children, like a transgender kid and a gay kid? It seems very, very unlikely to me. And you find out, of course, he's divorced. And who knows what that situation looked like. And those fundamental relationships were so broken. And so everybody that tells you that this is a spiritual war, which we were arguing about all last year, we were making that point. It's a spiritual war. Spiritual war is not just like fought in politics. It's fought in values. And it's fought in the way that you go out there and live life. So as I end this little kind of sermon type podcast, I want people to consider things. There's principle. There's what this system was set up to do. And it was only set up to work when the people that were living within it were that third leg of the triangle, which is that they were good and moral people. There's plenty of examples of this being discussed by the founding fathers. But the idea is that those people had the shared values. And so what we've seen for the last 30 years is a aggressive, specific attempt to undermine those things. And they've been working. And you're not going to get it back by spending a ton of government money in one way. You're going to get it back by having people focus back on the basics. The same way that you fix every single sporting team when they start getting their eye off the ball and they start losing games. What do? Do you start doing fancier plays and spending more money or more lavish things? Or do you need a new stadium? Do you need new uniforms? No, you go back to the basics. Always go back to the simplicity of What does this game mean? What are the principles that brought you here? So there's that. That's what I'm going to end with today, which is a lot, and it's kind of a heavy piece. And in any case, if you guys want to follow the rest of these things, there's going to probably be rigorous debate about this Brony situation, this kid and what it means. Do not lose sight of the fact that somebody was like, well, is it about SSRIs? It's like, well, why are kids on SSRIs? Because that fundamental trust relationship is broken, and it's left them in a place where they are despondent and they can't figure out what's safe in the world. Anybody knows anything about young men, we don't tend to develop all the way until we're in our late 20s, mid-20s. My best decisions were made after about age 25, questionable ones for a long time before that. So you're taking these undeveloped minds and you're breaking something that's fundamental to their understanding of what the world is supposed to work like. It's really tough. If you guys are watching over on Rumble, I'd appreciate it if you guys give us a like. We'd appreciate that. You can hit the little thumb up there at any time during the program. That'd be great. Same story for those of you who are watching on YouTube. You guys know the deal. In fact, YouTube's pretty good about this. Per capita, I think they're better at it. YouTube.com/@KyleSeraphin. Guys, give us a thumb up on there. Share the show around if you think this was impactful, if it meant anything to you. If you want to join a bunch of like-minded people for free, you can do so over at KyleSeraphin.com. It'll take you to Locals. You got to get a Locals/Rumble account, and you can go out there and interact with us in the community. If you want to get the behind-the-scenes stuff, you can also be a paid subscriber. It's up to you. I don't mind either way. And lastly, Spotify is a place where you can go and leave us a comment. You can leave us a 5-star review, and you can share it with a friend at KyleSeraphinShow.com. That's it today. Should we do something that's like a little bit cleansing? I feel like we should. I feel like we should have a cleanse. Let me see if I can pull something up real quick right out of the pocket. There was something my wife and I saw the other day that made us smile. And it's a mom doing mom-type things. It's a mom being funny with a high degree of musical talent. That is to say that there are plenty of incredibly talented moms who are not doing things outside of the house for a living, and they still can make money in this modern economy, which is amazing. This is a lady named Big Merla. If you guys don't follow her, you should totally find her on Instagram. She's hysterical. Funnier even if you're a mom, I think, because my wife laughs hysterically. I just smile a lot. Here she is doing a throwback while we're talking about classic values.
Oh, you inches, drop it low, show your ankles via hoe, like it's 1644, get low, 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 low. Oh, you inches, drop it low, show your ankles via hoe, like it's 1644, get low, 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 low. 3-6 line, damn it, madam, you are fine. 3-6 line, so come to me one more time. 3-6 line, damn it, madam, you are fine. 3-6 line, so come to me one more time. From the window to the wall till sweat dropped on my balls till all these bitches go la 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 la. From the window to the wall till sweat dropped down my balls till all these bitches go.
There you go. That's a little bit lighthearted after a heavy show. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you have a great Tuesday as we go into this 4th of July, end of the week. And like I said, we're going to do one more show, which will be tomorrow. If you guys are still watching on Rumble, we'll go over to the American Radicals podcast in progress. You guys may have to rewind it and see what they're doing. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out with me during this time. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.